Detective Sarah Morrison received the call at 6:34 a.m. on January 15, 2023. A fisherman had discovered human remains on Lighthouse Beach in Brookings, Oregon. After 19 years with the Oregon State Police, Morrison had worked dozens of cases, but something about this one made her hands shake as she drove toward the coast in the pre-dawn darkness. The beach had been her jurisdiction since 2003. She remembered the Amanda Price case, remembered the young teacher's mother sobbing in the police station, remembered the running shoes found abandoned on the rocks. As she approached the scene, where forensic teams were already setting up their equipment around the skeletal remains wedged between storm-shifted boulders, Morrison felt a chill that had nothing to do with the January wind. After 2 decades, Amanda Price had finally been found, and the evidence about to emerge would lead investigators to the last person anyone in Brookings expected. The shoreline had been cordoned off with police tape. Forensic anthropologist Dr. Catherine Chen and her team were kneeling around the remains wedged between 2 massive rocks. The previous night's storm had reshaped the coastline. Boulders that had stood in place for decades had shifted, revealing secrets that had been hidden beneath them. Female, mid-20s, approximately 5 foot 4 inches, said Dr. Chen as Morrison approached. Signs of a blunt force trauma to the skull. She's been here at least 15 years. The salt water preserved her, but it also destroyed a lot. Morrison knelt down to look at the remains. Among the bones were fragments of pale pink fabric. Synthetic material had held up better than natural fibers. And then she saw it. A small silver locket, its chain gone, but the locket itself still gleaming. "Photograph it," Morrison said, her voice. "There might be something inside." Amanda Lynn Price was born on August 14, 1977, in Portland. Her parents, Claire and Michael Price, were a young couple who had met at the University of Oregon. Claire was an English teacher, Michael an electrical engineer. Amanda was their only child, planned, wanted, passionately loved. Brookings was a small coastal town at the southern tip of Oregon, just 6 miles from the California border, population 6,000. Its economy based on commercial fishing, timber, and tourism. It was known for its dramatic Pacific Ocean coastline with jagged rocks and lighthouses lined up against the shore. This was a place where everyone knew everyone, where children rode bikes freely, and crime rates were well below the state average. Amanda had moved to Brookings in 2001 after graduating from Portland State with a degree in elementary education. She started working as a 3rd-grade teacher at Brookings Elementary School. The salary was modest, but Amanda had wanted to escape city life and become part of a small-town community. She was living a dream. She rented a small 2-bedroom cottage overlooking Lighthouse Trail with a roommate, Jennifer Walters. Jennifer worked at the local library. The two quickly became best friends, hiking on weekends, drinking wine, and making future plans. Amanda was a runner. She had run cross-country in high school and maintained the habit through college. When she moved to Brookings, her morning routine settled in immediately. She woke up every morning at 5:45, put on her running clothes, and laced up her pink Nike Air Max shoes. At 6, she'd step out the door and begin her 4-mile loop along Lighthouse Trail. The trail stretched along a dramatic coastal vista, passing the edge of rocky cliffs and eventually reaching the historic St. George Lighthouse, built in 1856. Mornings were usually empty, just a few local fishermen and the occasional early-rising tourist. Amanda loved the safety, the familiar faces, the predictability of encountering the same people every morning. Her neighbors could set their watches by her. Walter Hayes paid particular attention. Sitting on his cottage porch, he'd watch Amanda pass, wave, and sometimes suggest she stop by for coffee afterward. September 12, 2003, was a Friday. Amanda woke at 5:45 as usual. From her bedroom, Jennifer heard the sound of the coffee maker and Amanda moving quietly around the apartment. At 5:58, the front door closed gently. Tom Bradford, a 68-year-old retired fisherman, saw Amanda pass along Lighthouse Trail that morning at 6:02. "Good morning, Mr. Bradford," Amanda had called out, as she always did. Tom waved. He watched her blonde ponytail swing, her pink jacket gleaming in the morning light. This would be the last person to see Amanda Price alive. When Jennifer woke at 7:30, she noticed Amanda hadn't returned yet. This was unusual. Amanda was usually home by 7:15, showering and getting ready for work. By 8, Jennifer began to truly worry. She called Amanda's cell phone. It rang on the kitchen counter. Amanda never took her phone when running. At 8:30, Jennifer drove her car along Amanda's running route. When she reached St. George Lighthouse, her heart was pounding. On the rocky beach, just above where the waves were spring, she saw Amanda's running shoes, pink Nike Air Max, size 7, placed side by side with laces tucked inside, neatly arranged. But there was no trace of Amanda herself. Jennifer's 911 call came at 8:47. Within 10 minutes, 2 patrol cars from Brookings Police Department arrived. By afternoon, a large-scale search operation was underway. Police Chief David Thornton coordinated the search. He was 40 years old, had been police chief for 10 years, and nothing like this had ever happened in Brookings. There had been missing children, but they were always found within a few hours. An adult woman didn't vanish in broad daylight on a popular trail. Search dogs were brought in. They followed Amanda's scent from the cottage along the trail to where the shoes were found. Then, the trail vanished. The dogs circled confused. The scent seemed to have evaporated into the air. Either she went into the water, the dog handler, or she got into a vehicle. Thornton didn't favor the second option. Why would a man get into someone's car? Abduction here in Brookings. By sunset, more than 100 volunteers had scoured the beaches and wooded areas. Coast Guard helicopters flew over the coastline. Divers checked underwater. They found nothing. Amanda's family arrived in the evening. Claire Price was trying to hold herself together. Michael was stern and silent. "My daughter didn't run away," Michael said, his voice dangerously calm. "Amanda is responsible. She'd never leave her phone behind. She'd never disappear without telling anyone. Someone did something to her." The media grabbed the story immediately. Headlines like, "Teacher vanishes on morning run," appeared on local news, followed by national networks. Amanda's school photo, bright blue eyes, warm smile, blonde hair, appeared on television screens. Tips started coming in. Someone had seen someone who looked like Amanda at a gas station in California. Someone else had seen her at a restaurant in Coos Bay. Every tip was investigated. None led anywhere. On Wednesday, 4 days after her disappearance, a town meeting was held. Brookings Community Center was packed. Claire Price stood at the podium holding her daughter's photo, her voice breaking. "If any of you know anything, please come forward. Amanda is a good girl. She has her whole life ahead of her. We just want to bring her home." In the crowd sat Walter Hayes, hands folded in his lap, nodding his head as tears streamed down his cheeks. After the meeting, he approached Claire. "I'm praying," Walter said. "Every day. Amanda was a special young woman. We all miss her." Claire thanked him, taking comfort from this elderly neighbor's kindness. But as clues dried up, hope began to fade. The FBI got involved in the case, sending profilers. Their assessment was cold. Amanda was most likely the victim of a crime of opportunity. Someone had seen her on the trail, watched her, and acted when the moment came. But who? And why was there no physical evidence at all? Detective Sarah Morrison had just been assigned to the Oregon State Police in 2003, still 30 years old. The Amanda Price case was her first major case. She spent weeks reviewing phone records, questioning possible suspects, re-examining the crime scene. The shoes bothered her. Why were they placed there so neatly? If Amanda was trying to escape, why would she take off her shoes? And if the attack was sudden, why were the shoes so carefully arranged? It's staged, Morrison told her senior partner, Detective Luis Ramirez. Someone wanted to make this look like an accident. Maybe like Amanda jumped and fell, but it didn't work. Ramirez nodded. So, it was planned. Someone was watching her, knew her routine, was waiting for an opportunity. Morrison focused on everyone who regularly walked along Lighthouse Trail. Fishermen, runners, dog walkers. They questioned them all. There were a few men with minor criminal records, but none connected to Amanda's disappearance. Walter Hayes was also questioned. 68 years old, retired from the Navy, widowed. His wife Martha had died of cancer 5 years earlier. He'd been living alone since then. He was active in volunteer search teams, fixing neighbors' bicycles, teaching neighborhood kids how to fish. Everyone loved Walter Hayes. I used to see her running every morning, Walter said, answering Morrison's questions. Beautiful girl. Always smiled and waved. I saw her that morning too. Must have been around 6. Never saw her again. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. Morrison didn't question his sincerity. Walter Hayes seemed like just a concerned neighbor. By summer 2004, the investigation had slowed. Amanda's family, with community help, established a $50,000 reward fund. Posters stayed up across the state, but no new leads came. In 2005, Claire Price held a funeral service for Amanda. There was no body, but there was a need for closure. Brookings Presbyterian Church was packed. Walter Hayes sat in the front row, tears flowing. As the years passed, the Amanda Price case became a cold file. Morrison was promoted, heading the Oregon State Police Cold Heart Attack in 2015. Claire believed his broken heart killed him. Claire continued living alone in her small Portland home, visiting Brookings every September, leaving flowers where Amanda had disappeared. Walter Hayes aged. By 2020, he was 85, his health deteriorating. He still lived in his beach cottage, but rarely went out anymore. Neighbors brought groceries, picked up his prescriptions. He was Brookings' beloved old man. Then came the night of January 14th, 2023, when the big storm arrived. The Pacific storm was what meteorologists called the event of the century. Wind speeds reached 85 miles per hour. Waves rose 30 feet. Trees fell along the coastline. Roofs flew off. Power went out. The damage in Brookings was extensive, but the real discovery would come the next morning. Marcus Webb, a 52-year-old lobster fisherman, was checking Lighthouse Beach at dawn to see the condition of his traps. The landscape was unrecognizable. The storm had reshaped the shoreline, moving massive boulders. Between 2 large rocks, Marcus saw something gleaming. He approached. Then he staggered backward, feeling nauseous. A skull. Staring up at the gray January sky, Morrison's team extracted the remains. That afternoon, Dr. Chen worked meticulously cataloging each bone, finding fabric fragments. The silver locket. And one more thing, a small plastic piece attached to hair. "What's this?" Morrison asked. "Running earbuds," said Dr. Chen. "Old type for iPod Shuffle. Popular in the early 2000s. Morrison's heart raced. Amanda's roommate, Jennifer, had said, Amanda listened to music while running. She carried a small iPod. DNA analysis took 2 days. When the results came, they reached Morrison's hand, her hands trembling. The bones belonged to Amanda Lynn Price. But this was just the beginning. Dr. Chen's analysis revealed more: blunt trauma to the skull. Amanda had been struck from behind, probably with a heavy object. Death had been instantaneous. And then the lab dropped the bomb. Inside the silver locket, preserved, were microscopic blood residues. DNA extraction was performed. The profile didn't belong to Amanda. It belonged to someone else. Morrison compared the profile to the national database. No match. But in 2023, there was a new tool: genetic genealogy. Morrison contacted Dr. Elena Vasquez, a forensic genetics expert who specialized in solving cold cases using public databases like GED Match and Family Tree DNA. Dr. Vasquez uploaded the profile. 2 weeks later, the result came: a third cousin match. Vasquez began building a family tree, tracing records backward, then forward. A month later, a name emerged: Walter Joseph Hayes. Morrison couldn't believe her own eyes. Walter Hayes, the elderly neighbor, the man who volunteered in search teams, the man who comforted Amanda's mother. But science didn't lie. The blood on the locket belonged to Walter Hayes. On March 3, 2023, Morrison arrived at Walter Hayes' cottage with a support team. Walter was 88 now, frail, dependent on a wheelchair with oxygen tubes attached. "Mr. Hayes," Morrison said, her voice steady, "you're under arrest in connection with the death of Amanda Price." Walter looked at them. There was a long silence. Then he bowed his head. "You finally came," he whispered. "It took too long." In the interrogation, Walter confessed the story was as horrific as he'd carried for 20 years. Walter had been watching Amanda for months. He'd become obsessed with her. "She reminded me of my life," he said. "My lost youth. How my wife Martha looked when she was young." That morning, Walter had woken early to wait for Amanda to pass. But he'd made a plan. Walter on the trail in a deserted spot. He positioned himself to encounter Amanda. "I just wanted to talk," Walter said, "to tell her how beautiful she was. But she was scared. She tried to push me away and I picked up a rock. I didn't even think, Amanda had been struck in the back of the head. Instant death. Walter had hidden the body between the rocks somewhere. He thought no one would look. He'd staged the shoes, trying to mimic an accident. "I wanted to die with her," Walter said. "But I was a coward. 20 years, every night I see her, every night I hear her." The trial took place in June 2023. Walter pleaded guilty. The judge gave him life in prison, but Walter was already dying. Claire Price was in the courtroom. She'd waited 20 years. She looked at Walter, no expression on her face. "You can't give me my daughter back," she said. "But at least now I know. At least now it can end." Walter Hayes died in prison on September 3, 2023. 3 months after his conviction, he was 88 years old. Amanda Price was buried in St. Mary's Cemetery next to her mother, Claire. The funeral was small and private, just family and close friends. Morrison said at the funeral, "Amanda has found the peace she deserved." The Oregon State Police held a press conference detailing how the case was solved through genetic genealogy. The technique was solving dozens of cold cases across the country. Brookings became a peaceful town once again, but the 20-year lie left a lasting impact on a community trust had been broken. Neighbors weren't so sure anymore. Amanda's former students, now adults, erected a monument along Lighthouse Trail commemorating their teacher, forever missed, never forgotten. And every September morning in the first light of day, runners still use that trail. But now they look over their shoulders, because Brookings learned that even in the smallest towns, even in the safest places, darkness can hide. If this story moved you, please subscribe and hit the like button. Every subscription helps us continue investigating cold cases that families are still waiting to solve. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and which unsolved case you'd like us to cover.